So I brought my dad on with me today because he used to be a pastor, and I thought it'd be really interesting to like go read the Bible with him, father and son style, and see the different perspectives that come up. And we're starting off with one of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible. Also, kind of made my YouTube career talking about it. So, Ecclesiastes 1. I'll just start reading some verses, and then we can talk about it as we go.
Go for it.
All right. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? One generation passes away, and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. The sun also rises, and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it arose. The wind goes towards the south, and turns around to the north. The wind whirls about continually, and comes again on its circuit. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again.
I think what's important for everybody who wants to follow along is to take in a context of who might have written Ecclesiastes and what we're talking about in terms of context, biblical time.
What's kind of interesting about that is in like scholarly studies, the actual author of like Ecclesiastes is like kind of up for debate because the old text has some like Persian writing in it, which is way faster or way later than when Solomon would write it. But overall, I think it's kind of speaking to a guy who was gifted all the wisdom, who was gifted riches if we look at like Solomon's life. And that's what makes him more crazy when he's like talking like this, right?
I think this is a good segue to how I read Ecclesiastes is I go back all the way to the beginning of the Bible. And this is a tip that I have for everyone out there. Understanding that God is a loving father. So why would God, as a loving father, if that's what you believe, write or allow this to be written in this specific way? And if you go back to Genesis, it's about the tree of knowledge of good and evil. When they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they started to die. Death entered their lives, and they got cursed. Man got cursed to toil from the soil, which Ecclesiastes talks a lot about in how toiling and work is maybe not worth it. And that's where a lot of people gravitate towards this. But also, knowledge of good and evil is a form of wisdom. And King Solomon, or whomever wrote this, sometimes says, hey, knowing all this stuff can be kind of pointless and meaningless at the same time without it being attributed to some form of higher meaning.
Okay, interesting. You want to keep going?
Let's do it.
Sure. All right. All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come by those who will come after.
We get wrapped up so much, even as Christians, but you see the world do this, wanting to be something new under the sun. And this sort of pops that bubble and says there's nothing new under the sun. It's all going to go away anyway. So we might as well reflect upon what's not going to go away.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I find that like so comforting. Sometimes I'll sit there and it'll just remind me the things that are bothering me, the remembrance of its like temporariness, everything, like my life, what's like these emotions, all of it is gonna float. It's gonna go like smoke, up into the air, into wherever it be. All right, I'll keep reading. I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven. This burdensome task God has given to the sons of man, by which they may be exercised. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and indeed all is vanity and grasping for the wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be numbered. Grasping for the wind? I think that's such a crazy like metaphor, whatever. I didn't pay enough attention to English to know exactly, but because you can feel wind, like I can feel it when it blows against my hand. So that's not to say it's nothing, but it's formless. There's always this feeling like, hey, maybe if I keep going, I'll be able to grasp it, and you're just always grasping, and you can almost feel it and it's so close and you can, but it never actually like holds in your hand. That's one thing I thought was like super crazy about that metaphor.
And that's what the author calls tragic. But I'm curious on what you think about this whole notion that God is the one that granted this tragic existence to the human race. Because if I'm reading that at face value, I'm gonna be a little upset when it comes to God doing this to us.
I feel like every person has a right to like really sit there and question why the world is this wind grasping, that what, why is it set up this way? And it's I think that's what half this book is about. The preacher with all the wisdom, maybe it's Solomon, right? Trying to figure out, hey, I have everything to understand why my loving God would make the world so grasping and so futile and so like cyclical with everything passing away. And I can't. I don't understand it. And I think every person has to deal with that. And half the days I don't know the answer to that question.
I think that's the point. And I've had to wrestle with this my entire life. God purposely creates that dissonance or that conflict or that friction, the inner conflict within us, because God wants us to question what we see. What is the nature of that wind? What is the nature of us naturally wanting to try and fix things that are crooked? There's something in all of us, and I do this to you as a parent. I look at things inside of you and I say, oh, that's crooked. I need to make it straight because, you know, my emotional legacy as a parent is on the line. And this book, if a guy who's so wealthy looked at everything with all that wisdom still comes to that conclusion, well, what am I going to do about it?
Okay. I communed with my heart, saying, look, I have attained greatness and have gained more wisdom than all those who were before me in Jerusalem. My heart has understood great wisdom and knowledge, and I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this is also grasping for the wind. And then the craziest line. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. When times are like really dark with my faith, the fact that this book is even in the Bible is like one of those things that like can usually pull me out. This Ecclesiastes is the book that has saved my faith over and over again as I realize that, oh man, God knows I'm going through this and he cared enough to write something about me. Someone like me who also experienced it.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly interesting and relevant to everybody who'd be watching this, is that all of us as Christians go through these phases where we wrestle and struggle. I remember growing up and being in these moments where I would literally just want to cry so bad and scream that I would walk barefoot out of my house, go into the middle of the field and scream my eyeballs out, thinking somebody was going to call the cops. And I think that's just part of Christian existence. The question is, what's in it for God the Father?
Yeah.
Let me challenge you for a moment.
Okay.
Because there are two characters in this. There is the individual, the teacher who's writing it, and God the Father observing and having that experience with him at the same time. That triangulates with our experience. So instead of just looking at what is potentially King Solomon going through, what is God experiencing, watching, or being right there with King Solomon as he goes through this anguishing existence? That's the reason I think that you have such a resonance with this, because it's the way that God connects with you and you're learning to connect with God.
If I was able to understand everything about how the world worked or justice worked or everything just through myself, there would no reason to be like have a relationship. And I think the gap of my wisdom is what forces me in those moments to embrace just to look at trees and squirrels in the eye and just be there with God. And if wisdom was able to do everything for me, I don't need God. I would probably abandon God, honestly, if I was able to understand it. But it's that gap and that desperation to understand is when I'll have to jump and I'll just have to be there with God, not not justify God, not justify me or anything. I just have to be there. It becomes about like absolute presence. And knowledge is usually like, for me, knowledge is pretty abstract.
That's what gives me comfort. In watching you wrestle, I know you're in good hands, God's hands. And that's where I have confidence and I don't worry. A lot of parents might worry watching their kids go through this, but I go, oh, he signed up for it, so we're good.
No, I didn't sign up for it. That's the thing. I didn't. But yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
Technically, you did. Everybody's watching this video, and other people who come and say, you know what, I'm actually going to look at the spiritual side of my life. You're signing up for quite the experience, and it's not always pleasant, which is the reason I think, and I hope this sets up for everybody, Ecclesiastes is so beautiful in the way that it's written because chapter 1 gets right to the pain. You know, it's marketing 101. Start with a pain point. This gives us the pain, and then later you get so hungry for that joy that you're talking about, and I look forward to unpacking because that's my hope for you is you learn joy in spite of what you experienced in chapter 1. You learn the joy in terms of your relationship with God the Father, our relationship together, your relationship with everybody out there. I look forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I think that's chapter 1 for you. Is there anything else you'd like to finish off with?
Let's do it. I'd love to hear what everybody else has to say and journey together. I think it'll be fun.
Okay, sounds good. Well, you know, yeah, YouTube stuff, you know what? Like, yeah. All right.